Coming up on Outside the Lines, first report.
Left-handed hitter, and a throw to first, and they have picked him off. Holiday never got back to the bag.
With the Red Sox up 2-0 and thinking World Series sweep, the Rockies head back to the mountains with a seemingly insurmountable climb ahead. As the wind and raging fires of Southern California mercifully taper off, the NFL left on the spot. What to do about the Chargers home game on Sunday? A decision has been made. With the richest race in American horse racing upon us, we examine why the best horses in the world are breaking down at an unprecedented rate.
The analogy would be as if you marry a woman that has had a nose job and a breast enlargement and expect their offspring to come out with large breasts and a perfect nose. It just doesn't work that way.
Steroids, overtraining, and misleading plastic surgery. The alarming issues that surround the breeding of a Breeders' Cup champion. Now on Outside the Lines.
And now, sitting in for Bob Lee, Steve Bunin.
The good news is the weather is getting better in Southern California. The sobering reality is the bad news. At least 7 have died in or because of some 23 wildfires that have blazed since Monday, torching more than 750 square miles of land, destroying more than 1,600 homes, and doing $1 billion of damage in San Diego County alone. As of this morning, 9 fires were still burning. Mayor Jerry Sanders, among the hundreds of thousands evacuated from his home, announcing just an hour ago the Chargers game will be played at Qualcomm Stadium as scheduled Sunday afternoon. We're now joined by Jay Paris, who covers the Chargers for the North County Times. Jay, where are the evacuees who were at the stadium going if their homes are gone?
Well, there's quite a few shelters all around San Diego County, really, and as the days went by, the numbers at Qualcomm were dwindling, and at the last day or so, there were only a couple hundred after a high of 10,000 or so. So while Qualcomm served its purpose, it wasn't really meant to be a long-term shelter, and there's certainly other sites around the county where those people can go.
From your contacts in the NFL, what went into the decision to keep the game as scheduled?
Well, I think the biggest concern was the emergency and police. If those personnel were needed elsewhere, certainly they couldn't put on an NFL game. There was also the issue of air quality. With all these fires burning, it's not exactly pristine air out there, to say the least. But I think once it got thought clearly that the air was getting better, that the stadium was no longer needed for a shelter, and really these San Diego folks, they need a pump in the arm, and if they can watch their bolts and if they can forget about the fires and the smoke and the ash for maybe 4 hours on Sunday, that certainly was appealing. But first they had to take in the health concerns and also the police and fire concerns as well. Like
the mayor, like Philip Rivers, LaDainian Tomlinson, Phil Mickelson, you also had to evacuate your home. What are people talking about on the streets? Are they talking about ways to get distractions? Are they talking about the recovery effort itself?
They're talking about bouncing back. I mean, the President Bush was here yesterday, telling there are better days ahead, and people are pretty resilient out here, and they know wildfires are part of this landscape, so it certainly doesn't take anybody by surprise when this does happen. Their thinking is they wanted their Chargers. They wanted to see the Chargers play, and if you do it the right way here. You start off the game with Alex Spanos donating $1 million. Robert McNair, the Texan guy, donated $1 million, and run a scroll across the whole game with the Red Cross number. Let's raise some money. Let's get some good out of this.
And what's the Chargers' state of mind, if you could summarize them as a team?
They wanted to play here. They've been away from their families. They've been away from their homes. 24, 25 of the players were evacuated as well, and they wanted to come back as well. They didn't want to go to Texas. They didn't want to play in Dallas. They didn't want to play up in L.A. They wanted to play at Qualcomm in front of their fans, and I think you'll probably see a pretty inspired effort by them on Sunday.
Jay Paris, we appreciate you joining us on Outside the Lines, and continued success in the recovery effort.
Thanks for having me.
Game 2 of the World Series last night. First inning, Colorado takes its first lead of the game, partly because of base running. Kurt Schilling slow getting over to third base. Willie Taveras, who'd been hit by the pitch, eventually scores on a Todd Helton groundout, and the Rockies are in business. Valdo Jimenez pitching well, struck out 5 and 4 2/3, but tied at 1 in the bottom of the 5th with 2 out. Mike Lowell, an RBI double to left field, scores a run. Jonathan Papelbon comes in the 8th, and by the time we get to the 9th, the high cheese Down go the Rockies. They're down 2-0. History on Boston's side. 12 of the last 13 to open 2-0 in the World Series were eventually crowned champions. It will help the Rockies to head back to the Rocky Mountain time zone. Counting the playoffs, they've won 11 of 12 at home and were an NL best 51-31 at home during the regular season. Troy Rink just arrived in Denver after flying from Boston. The national baseball writer from the Denver Post joining us. And as you saw, the Red Sox, they won big, then they won small. What possible positives are the Rockies trying to take away from the games in Boston?
Well, it really comes down to this, 2 games, 2 runs, no chance. I mean, the Rockies know that if they're going to get back into this series, they need to hit. It's been the dirty secret of their postseason. They have a .228 batting average in 9 postseason games. But what can they take from last night? Well, they certainly showed they belong. Even though they didn't win, they hung around. They had chances to win that game, unlike the opener when they clearly looked a little rusty. So they take from it that we were in that game, we could have won it. Now they come home, as you mentioned, where they were the National League's most dominant team since June. And they're going to have crowd frenzy that they've never seen before in the history of this state.
They'll also have one of those dangerous Red Sox hitters out of the lineup. No designated hitter, so David Ortiz has to go somewhere. Could be the bench, but a guy hitting .384 with 5 homers in the playoffs. What do you know about what the Boston Red Sox want to do?
Well, it's an interesting question. I was talking to the Rockies owner Dick Monfort yesterday at Fenway Park about this, and he said, "How do you take Youkilis out of the lineup?" And and the answer might be you don't. There was some talk before the series that Youkilis might go to right field, put J.D. Drew in center, and then you'd have Manny in left, Ortiz at first, and keep Mike Lowell at third base. So maybe if you're the Red Sox, you're up 2-0 in the series, you come here, you're facing the Rockies at Coors, you figure we're going to try to win a high-scoring game, so you compromise a little defense. And in fact, right field might be a little easier to play here than left because right field isn't as big. So maybe we're going to see all 3 of their sluggers, Youkilis, Ortiz, and Lowell, stay in the lineup.
Dice came out to Zaka and Josh Fogg in Game 3. Matt Holliday was 4 for 4. You can't blame him from last night. But as a team, as you mentioned, the Rockies hitting .155 in the series. If you had to single out one guy that the Rockies and Red Sox are talking about, who's going to have to step up for the Rocks?
Well, it's the middle of the Rockies order. I mean, say it's a Todd Helton. You could say it's Todd Helton or Garrett Atkins. I mean, Garrett Atkins is a terrific hitter. I mean, this kid fell out of bed hitting line drives when he was probably 6 years old. He's going to hit eventually, but they're running out of time. He only has 1 RBI in the playoffs. He is one of the guys that makes consistent contact, so I could see their offense spinning off of him. Helton looks better here in the World Series, and Holliday, as you mentioned, had 4 hits, but they need to get Atkins going, and if it's not Atkins, it has to be Hop. One of those 2 between Garrett Atkins or Brad Hop needs to get hot here at home during this series this weekend. Might
get a little cold, but no snow in the forecast. Troy Rink of the Denver Post, we appreciate you joining us on Outside the Lines.
My pleasure.
All right, so we're asking you to get involved. You tell us, with no DH, who should the Red Sox bench in Game 3? Lowell, Ortiz, or Kevin Youkilis? This is how you can vote. Go to ESPN.com, search for Outside the Lines on the drop-down menu right there. You can vote in our polls. You can email us. Tell us what you think. Get involved at ESPN.com. Still to come, a Boston College quarterback with a last-minute touchdown toss that might just etch his name on the Heisman Trophy. Matt Ryan meet Doug Flutie. And with the stakes higher than ever, why are the world's fastest horses in worse shape than ever? That's coming up on Outside the Lines. This hour on Outside the Lines, former Georgia high school football star Gennarlo Wilson has been released from prison. The Georgia Supreme Court ordered the 21-year-old free today after ruling that his 10-year prison sentence for having consensual oral sex with a fellow teenager 4 years ago was cruel and unusual punishment. College football last night, a thriller in the rain in Blacksburg. Number 8 Virginia Tech trying to burst number 2 Boston College's unbeaten bubble. Down 10-zip, about 3 minutes left. Matt Ryan goes length through the field for 1 touchdown. 20 seconds to go, running to his left, throwing right. A last-second touchdown for the Eagles. Smells like Heisman, don't it? The Eagles 8-0 for the first time since 1942.
You think back and think several times during that game where you got an opportunity to go ahead and win.
On TV.
NFL Cowboys are off this week, sitting pretty at 6-1, their best record this late in the season since their last Super Bowl season. And they're doing it without Terry Glenn, who's still recovering from 2 knee surgeries, but worked out at the team's facility today and vowed to return by season's end. John Clayton joining us now with the latest on some big names in the NFL. John, we got the Texans going to play in San Diego as scheduled. Matt Schaub, will he play?
Matt Schaub will play because he took everything into practice. Now, officially, Gary Kubiak didn't make any announcements as far as who is going to be the starting quarterback, but the fact that Schaub did everything that he was supposed to do today, barring any setback with the hip and all those other injuries, he will start on Sunday against the Chargers.
They lost to the Titans. Tennessee hosting Oakland this weekend. Kerry Collins played pretty well in that win, but will Vince Young start, and how healthy is he?
He's healthy because he was able to do everything this week in practice. They officially list him as probable, but really by Wednesday, it was pretty certain in Jeff Fisher's mind that they wanted to get him back. He's the leader of the team, the leader of the offense, and now that he's healthy, he is going to be able to play, but Kerry's always going to be available as the backup.
The Colts, undefeated, quick turnaround from the Monday Nighter. They're in Carolina. David Carr will not start, but if Vinny Testaverde goes down, how healthy is Carr?
Well, Carr looks like he'll be the backup. I mean, the problem was they had him in the first team doing everything for the last couple days, but as they got to Friday, they just didn't feel comfortable about it. Remember, he has a compression fracture in his back. He is a little stiff, and certainly with taking the snaps and all that stuff, the more that John Fox watched it, he just felt safer with Vinny Testaverde as the starter. He'll have David Carr available as a backup, and certainly they're going to need to do some scoring because they're taking on the Colts.
The Vikings hosting the Eagles. Tavares Jackson, the lowest rated quarterback in the league at 48.7. What's his status for Minnesota?
I don't think he's going to play, although you can't discount it according to Brad Childress. What Brad just said minutes ago, that he'll either be number 1 or number 3. But remember, he has an index finger that has a break in it. He's having trouble throwing the ball. That's why Kelly Holcomb is going to probably be the starter. And if that's the case, then Jackson will be third. What he's trying to do is give him a chance to feel as if he can get healthy and maybe have a chance to play. But right now, I think everybody in Minnesota anticipates it's going to be Kelly Holcomb.
And how about a quick update on Brian Dawkins of the Eagles, who's missed 4 straight weeks with that stinger?
Well, you know, there's optimism in the middle of the week and pessimism now. They downgraded him to doubtful. That means he's not going to be able to play with that neck injury, a big blow, because they wanted to get back his leadership, and so it looks like that's not going to happen this week. He's the one Eagle who's going to miss the game.
John Clayton with the latest. We appreciate the time. If the best way to catch a sports fan's eye is with a good old-fashioned controversy, horse racing has one. Huge efforts that could be costing the thoroughbreds their lives. Next on Outside the Line.
Saturday.
It's somewhat fitting that the richest horse race in North America, the Breeders' Cup Classic, comes in the middle of the World Series. There's a medical riddle that perplexes the two sports alike, the dichotomy between medical progress and declining durability. How is it that the more sophisticated technology gets, the wiser we become about training, the better and quicker medical care we have? How is it that starting pitchers and elite horses are more brittle than ever? Randy Moss examines how the fastest horses in the world are also the most fragile. Joining us from Monmouth Park, New Jersey, the site of the Breeders' Cup Classic, the on-call vet at the race, Dr. Larry Bramlage. Larry, what do you most attribute to the declining durability of horses?
Well, I think the selective breeding does have a major factor. We reward brilliance, and we love to see the horses that are very, very excitable, and do very well in their career, but we don't really demand that they race for a long period of time. And genetically, we have certainly moved the conformation of the breed in my career, which is about 30 years, and so I think the durability has gone with it. It used to be in the 50s that the racing families who selected the stallions weren't breeding for the commercial market, and so it really wasn't as much of a factor. They rewarded the stallions that raced for them for a long time, and the horses that you named at the top of your piece, those are horses that for the most part were bred by those families. Now the brilliance in a 2 or 3 year old career, the horse goes off to his second career in pretty short order, and so we select for that brilliance and not for durability.
In New York, the latest statistics show that the catastrophic injuries to horses where they have to be euthanized is about the same over the last 20 years, but in California it's up about 30% in the last 3 years from the late 1990s. Why would there be such a difference in the two states?
Well, certainly there are different racing conditions, and the population of horses is somewhat mixed, but the California tracks, as there was a mention of speed early in the piece, they have the reputation of being much, much faster. they also have the weather conditions that are much more difficult to keep water in the track, and that's what makes the artificial surfaces appealing for California.
So what do you think ought to be done about this?
Well, you can't force people to purchase horses or to breed horses that are not competitive. I don't think there's any easy solution to the breed. The only way you can drive the pendulum back the other way is if in some fashion you reward durability, either with racing purses or with the sales that the stallion's offspring produce. So you have to swing the pendulum in that direction in some fashion if you're going to make the breed go that way.
And what is the impact on the horse, very quickly, in terms of the horse under any more pain now than it was 20 years ago?
No, it's just like football players are not under any more duress training than they were 20 years ago. In fact, we've got much better technology and we take much better care of them. So the individual horse doesn't have any particular effect on themselves.
At Monmouth Park, Dr. Bramlage, we appreciate you joining us on Outside the Lines. Coverage of the Breeders' Cup begins at 4 Eastern on ESPN2. College football live coming up. Reese and the gang going to discuss the potential Heisman moment for Matt Ryan against Vatek. All right, we've been asking you to log on, and you have at ESPN.com. Who should the Red Sox sit without the designated hitter in Game 3? And the majority of you, which is the plurality, say David Ortiz should go to the bench, let Euclid stay at first, and Lowell stay at third. We appreciate you voting. Nearly 20,000 doing so. That wraps it up for us here at Outside the Lines. I'm Steve Bunin. Next on ESPN, College Football Live. Could have been a Heisman moment last night for Matt Ryan. Reese Davis has the story.